everybody in? Yeah.
Good afternoon. Conservation Board, I'm going to call a roll. Commissioner Allen, are you here?
Yes.
Are you here?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, are you here virtually? Commissioner Green, are you here?
Here.
Alderman Ryan, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Richardson, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Robinson, have you snuck in? Okay. You know how he is.
Great.
1, 6. Commissioners, we have 6. Commissioners present, that constitutes 4. Agree, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, take a look at the agenda. Anybody introduce themselves in consideration of any of these items?
Yes, I am recusing myself from item E as an editor.
Anybody else? Are there any changes to the agenda? Bob, are there changes to the agenda?
There'll be one request for deferral, but that'll come up in a minute.
Okay. Any commissioner read the minutes from January 29th, 2024? If so, do you have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of January 29th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alan? The discussion hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Take the minutes are approved. Agenda. Begin by calling agenda item A.
Before we begin, I just want to send a message to those in the Zoom room. If you would like to speak on an agenda item, please put your name and the address of the item in the chat, and we'll make sure to call on you to get to that agenda item. So, I'm not sure if they have it in the Zoom room. Maybe or something. So, before I begin with agenda item A, what is the screen behind us?
Oh, that's just the sky. It's just the screen.
Before I begin my staff report, I must first acknowledge a gross error on my part. Last month, as you may remember, the applicants for 2013 and Marconi were not present. That was not their fault, that was mine. I failed to ensure that they were properly notified. This is not an excuse, it's just an explanation. I take full responsibility. I'd like to again apologize to the applicants, for the board, and to the public. So with that, we'll get on with the staff report. So first slide. This is a preliminary review for an application to demolish 2 single-family houses and construct an addition to a commercial building. This is 2013 and 2020. They're in the Hill neighborhood, which is a Christmas Review district. Constructed in 1904, 2015 Marconi left as an example of vernacular shiny house at the top of the space experts. A particular Italian American variant from the Hills. It's a 3.5-story single-family foundation and both pitched front gable roof. 2015 Marconi has a 2-bay front facade, presents the first story, its original single roof entry into the one-night single double windows. Original single doors as are all exterior facings and it's all this division in place. So it's dark, reversible, and original square territory is 2013 Marconi was constructed in 1914. That's the one right. While much larger in scale than 2015, it's also a vernacular shotgun house, which is a facade that rises to terminate the shape of pyramid in front of this and central gable. The proposed new construction, which I'll get to later in the presentation, would be a 2-story brick building that would generally mirror the existing historic corner built in Daggett, adding a 5th along Marconi, but otherwise replicating its massing materials and their detailing, and largely replicating its corner existing fenestration pattern. Look at the standards for evaluation of the preservation review districts. Redevelopment plans. There is no redevelopment plan for this area. Architectural quality. The existing houses are contributing buildings as they contribute to a possible historic district. They are examples of the modest redacted living houses characteristic of the bill. 2015 retains elements of its historic appearance. In 2013 has been heavily altered. Because of later development on the block, the original context of the houses has been lost, so their demolition would not greatly affect the character of the streets. We have the condition of the buildings which are sound under ordinance 6.69, which states that the exterior walls are capable of the site is located in an area with strong real estate market and buildings are generally well maintained in the neighborhood. We have not received information to count the viability of buildings for reuse, nor have received information about economic hardship. We start going through so this is an aerial view. On the right, the location of buildings and the location of Victoria's Market to the right. You can also see the Milo's to the left. So these are houses in a almost exclusively commercial block right now. Just give you some context. The alley. So under urban design, you know that the block is dominated by commercial buildings and uses, including two-story masonry commercial buildings in all four corners. These houses and the two one-story houses across the street are the only residential uses on the block. The loss of these wood frame buildings and their replacement by two-story masonry expansion of the current adjacent commercial use would not adversely impact the continuity. Getting to proposed subsequent construction. So this is the existing Victoria's on the corner of that Tony attack is, and it's looking south. So sort of stage the buildings working on the block. This is the adjacent warehouse and the two houses next door. Context for the corners. House on the left. Then this is the immediate context. So now if we go to the process for construction. Let's leave this here for a moment. Post construction would equal or exceed the contribution of construction to the integrity of its existing streetscape and block face. Proposed building is a mirror image of the existing corner building in 2001. Additionally, the buildings proposed for demolition will be greatly altered from their initial historic appearances. Post construction will be architecturally compatible with existing block face. Complies. Proposed construction will be a two-story commercial building, largely replicating a neighboring historic building as part of the project. Similar in scale, massing, materials, demonstration patterns. Proposed use complies with current zoning requirements. Yes, it does, although interestingly enough, the site of two houses is or was a commercial site of the adjacent warehouse was residential, and the corner building was commercial. Mr. DeCorio is going through the process with the planning and zoning to zone the warehouse go to the right of the building. Right now. So that could be some commercial and consolidating single parcel. And so currently it is already applied. And the construction would commence within 12 months. So now we'll go through some other details of the construction. Street view, what it would look like. So this is just the continuation of the existing Victoria's Market. Next slide. This is the elevation. So it's just got one additional bay from the corner building house. This is the side from the alley. So you can see along our entire block face. So you would see from the west, you can see that from the west, but there are other buildings there, so you can actually see that. Floor plan of the entire block showing construction on the left. Second floor plan. That's it. We just go back to that right now. So, preliminary findings and conclusions. 2013 to Mark County are looking at the conservation review district. They're considered contributing to the district. However, their original context is lost to their commercial development. Buildings are sound under the definition of 64689. The subsequent development would be a two-story addition to the existing commercial complex. The large unit must be historic elements of that complex, such as massing, scale, materials, and illustration patterns. And all the amenities for the project usually have. So we recommend we're granting them here.
I'm pretty sure that we have lost historic aspects. I've been on that street, the bike race goes right by there. It's sort of a mixed street as you go up and down. I know that block is more controlled. Wouldn't we lose some of the flavor of the mixed use of the last thing?
That is what we're looking at it. I think from our perspective, the context has largely been lost with the commercial expansion and bar next door doesn't watch for it. It's not even intact streetscape on that side of the street. I think an argument can be made, and obviously it's up to you, the preservation board, but we're looking at this as a balance of all of the requirements, and exemplary new construction is what it's with us. They put up to go extend the whole west to the south.
Meg, was there any consideration of on the building on the first floor, clear glass instead of glass block, something that might maybe mirror the storefront on the north end of the, I guess, all the original building, a little more closely?
I believe the applicant going to do that because it's going to be a warehouse. They want Francis creation.
Right.
Catherine's here and that's a condition of.
So you said it's contributing structure, but then the code is, you're supposed to classify it as high merit, merit, qualifying, or not. So it's contributing meaning qualifying.
There are a variety of definitions that justice versus in that we've actually been chart of. Contributing is listed in there, but it's not on the list. I don't know if that's makes sense, but contributing to a level to be created. Right, that really doesn't answer the question.
So I was just trying to figure out how we're going to cover demolition, merit, qualifying structure should not be for conception in certain cases. Isn't qualifying, so something less than qualifying, but more than not.
Yes, and we had the same issue last time. There's contributing is actually mentioned in the word, it's not mentioned in the list. There's a number of issues. I think it's important that these contribute, but again, the quality of such construction.
But that takes me to the sound condition, not supposed to demolition sound building license. List application criteria subsections A, D, F, and G indicate demolition is appropriate. A is not applicable. And D, they don't need, because that's neighbor effect. Right? So then we just have F, which is the proposed construction, so we're hanging our hat on that.
But in a local district, we wouldn't have a map of contributing and non-contributing identified, would we? All be triggered by text in the code.
We have inventories in the neighborhoods and communities within the districts.
Well, any building in the hill would contribute to a local district, proverbially potentially.
There's new construction that
So I mean, depending on how the period of significance could be extended. I'm just saying that in this case, it seems like they would just be in the local historic district. So these kinds of qualifications might be, they're very abstract.
Record of Commissioner Robinson is now present. Is the applicant present? Good afternoon. What would you like to tell us who you are? Tell us what you'd like us to do.
My name is John Memorial, representing Memorial Products Market. Looking to expand our business, increase economies for the city. We're in our third generation. We've been in business for 52 years, and just like that rolling the ball. We're looking to add some new items to the stores and the expansion. So it can go a little bit easier. We have customers, more space in there for customers as well. Just enjoy and flourish the flavor of the neighborhood that we're taking products.
City commissioners have any questions?
what kind of new items? My own
Well,
customers.
that's the secret. That's the balance. We're probably going to be adding a lot more cooked items, ready to eat items to be able to carry out. We're not going to have any sitting or dining in there. Because we already do like entrees and items, cantaloupe and stuff like that. Put in the freezer. We like to offer fresh for people to take home.
See what kind of relevant questions.
I thought that was very relevant.
Just a question about the glass block that I asked to the staff.
Well, probably going to be glass block in that building because it will be a warehouse, so we don't want people peering in that part of it. And actually, where those glass blocks are located will probably be like the prep area. We do a lot of packaging, your own cheese and everything. It'll probably be a packaging area, that location on that side of the building. So really want to explore all that. Where the glass block is now, in that second building just north of it, and a garage door. Now those will be windows and some.
We'll replace those.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's what we did with the third building out. It used to be our warehouse, which was the first grocery building. It's the same thing. Took away the garage door, but it.
Question for staff, it would be possible to go back to the elevations, please?
Sure.
Wanted to clarify. So I was wondering, did you consider perhaps adding the awnings that you've got on the original building? Because this wonderful job on the turret and the second floor, but the first floor does feel a little warehousey.
Mhm.
Is that possibly in the budget to add? Yeah, so it kind of.
Yeah, we'll stretch our home, so, yeah, it would be nothing but like home, so we'll continue that on the existing warehouse part as well.
It's dangerous when you have a bunch of architects on the panel, or at least two of us. I look at that facade and I just think, boy, it'd be nice to have one more set of glass block in there so we don't have that big blank thing on Marconi. My biggest exposure to this is when I'm playing bocce ball next door and going to that bike race.
Yeah.
And it's always so, that's why I'm kind of cringing, like, oh, I love those little houses, but what replaces it, I think, needs to be at that kind of scale, that neighborhood scale that's so great about the Hill. And I know you might not need the glass block inside, but it would make it a little bit more interesting. There are 3 little awnings and one in the corner, and we wouldn't see so much. Is that drive it you're building it with, a brick?
No, for
Is it brick? So,
I would say alternately, you could make those glass block windows wider, maybe to match
Yeah,
the proportions of
too
the
big.
storefronts on the original building. So there's more, more light, more sort of not transparency, but
you know, I don't know what you're doing.
less, more solid, avoid less solid on it. So it's not as forbidden to walk past.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, it's very great.
Is it clear to you what it's agreed to do?
Not exactly. So there's, in the motion, there may be some language to help us get clarity as to exactly what the board is requesting.
Any other questions? Thank you. Sir. Okay. Does anybody want to speak in favor or against this proposal?
Aaron Muncy,
You'll sign your name on every sheet. I'm gonna call on you for every item.
I only signed for 2 projects.
Okay, what do you want to tell us?
I'm in favor. So I have, I've been officing literally a block down at 1905 Marconi for the last 5 years. Walk by this often. We eat Gregorius pizzas quite often. While I understand Mike's concerns about the residential components, Marconi, I think these 2 and possibly one other single-family home resides on Marconi. This very much, this north-south road is very much commercial. Once you get off of Marconi, it goes back to residential. So I also agree with some of the comments maybe about the block and the awnings. So I think that will be wiser. So I'm in support.
Anybody else?
Move the preservation board grant preliminary approval for demolition of the 2 single-family houses and the construction of addition to the commercial building with the conditions that the demolition permits not be approved until after the issuance of building permits, that the design be altered to add either 2 larger glass block panels or a 3rd similarly sized glass block panel with awnings at the, what is this, the Marconi side. And the Cultural Resources Office review and approve final design details, exterior, interior, and colors.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Now, is it clear?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Any discussion, commissioners? You want to ask about the nexus?
No, I'm just excited for the new offerings.
Going to call a roll. Motion makers will vote Commissioner Allen, vote yes or no.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter, you vote yes or no.
Yes.
Mr. Coleen, you vote yes or no.
Yes.
Ryan, you vote yes or no.
Yes.
Richardson, you vote yes or no.
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes, you vote yes or no.
Yes.
Chair abstains on this vote. There are 6 yeses, 1 abstention, 1 absent. Motion carries.
As some people joined the Zoom, I just wanted to restate to everybody who was taking the meeting virtually, if you'd like to speak on an agenda item, please put your name and the address of the agenda item into the chat. We'll call on you to use that.
Commissioners, we're going to show that there's a little bit now. Which appeals and directed denials. A little bit. Staff. Reduce all the items. This is 2409 South 10th Street. To introduce into the record the enabling ordinance 64689, it's submitted by 64925. The Solar Neighborhood Historic District Ordinance 57078, submitted by 62382. The application is in the PowerPoint presentation. You probably remember this from
What's the name?
Brian.
Yes.
You probably remember this from last month. The item was deferred after the presentation due to the lack of side gable roof on plans. The applicant went back and found a new model example that has a flat roof. And so they redesigned the building to match. This is the new proposal. You can see the wrapped the cornice and the foundation around buildings. What the whole north side of the building now is brick. That was more request from the neighborhood as the building that has been approved for the lot north of this hasn't been constructed. It's just buildings to the south, lot to the north, across the street. The building now applies the majority of the Solar Historic District neighborhoods by local historic district standards. The model example they shows is appropriate. Solar Restoration Group has sent a letter of support for the project. There's no comments. Cultural Resources Office recommends the Preservation Board overturn the administrative denial for the construction of the single-family house at 2409 South 10th Street with condition of final drawings, details, and exterior materials review.
You have a picture of the model?
Yeah.
That.
Yes.
See the design. Excellent. So in that district, are we not needing to replicate cornices or?
It is sort of, it's kind of hard to see on that drawing, but it is pretty close. It's just it is very close. I mean, they don't have to be right. It's not, doesn't have to be right. It's exact. It is about the same size.
Well, okay, so we got that band between the brick and the stone. It's thicker on the model example, and it's sort of thin and out of proportion on this one. That arch over the front door, it looks like they've started it at an odd spot where on the example, it starts right where the door stops. So details be worked out with staff.
Right.
Look at little things like that. Sorry. That's all I have.
Summary says, applies to the majority of this ordinance.
I don't know that there actually, at this point, are any that don't. It's not exact replication of it, this is how.
So you would say it applies to this ordinance.
Sure. I move that the Preservation Board overturn the Director's administrative denial with the condition that final drawings, details, and exterior materials be reviewed and approved by the Cultural Resources Office.
Second. Was it me?
Who's made the second? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
just to make sure that, Commissioner Allen, still yes?
Still yes.
Okay, sure, staying like this, 6 yeses.
Next one is 1920 Victor Street. I don't know if you want me to go ahead and have the truth. Applicant has asked to defer to marketing.
Second.
Excellent. Notice the staff of the truth. Need to enter in ordinances 64689, then by 642. It's budget ordinance 6942, park vegetation, all that stuff. This is 4466 Hollow Street. It's an appeal, denial to install artificial turf in the front yard of this building. But it's the location. It's kind of a mix of commercial. There's some building questions residential, office space, some commercial, other stuff down the block from institutional. Next, some street level context. So the concern is the landscaping, especially that really is limited landscaping along here. There's some stuff in the front of the buildings along the north side of the street and also further down. But the majority of the landscaping is in front of the building in question. Next, this is the building. Back in December, the area building inspector stopped the installation of turf. Next picture, please. Right there, without permits. And so since there are requirements for landscaping in West End, contacted the applicant who is here and started the process of them appealing the project to put in turf. The issue in question is you can't do artificial turf that's not part of the predominance of landscaping. And in this area, we want to make sure that you don't want to pointing this and saying staff approved turf at staff level. So we denied the application. Turf. It's a good material. You've seen samples of it. It looks like grass, but it is artificial. So the area question is a small rectangular portion at the front will be surrounded by a black metal fence, which is fine. So the main question before you is the turf, and it's not the use, general forest, that you're questioning the dog park. The only question was just the turf. Next.
This is a sample on the right side from what it would look like. This is again the area question. Next. So again, the issue at hand is that it calls for a dominance of a certain length of material. And we just want to make sure that, you know, for instance, you should say, well, you allow turf on one spot and not elsewhere. So given that, staff recommends that the board uphold the regulation. And there is support from the elected official, Alderman Browning, as well as the neighborhood. You've gotten that correspondence as well.
History of what has been on the ground over the years.
I rehearsed it.
Just tell us what it was.
It was a school prior to field school. And then since then, it's now a,
I mean, you know, 33
apartment.
what was covering?
Previously, there was asphalt in front, and then it became grass, and now it's a series of things over the years.
And one, well, the photo right behind you, there's a missing section of the historic fence. Do we know where that is?
The applicant certainly can speak to the location of said fence.
Okay.
So
This
this
will
has,
be again a black metal fence that will kind of encompass the turf and area.
this has not been installed yet.
Not yet, you just removed it, and the area inspector did say, hey, you're trying to do turf. You need a permit. Several, and they're all approved. That was great. Staff still.
Under the development now? Where's the development?
Me again,
Okay,
Aaron Bunsey, I'm the architect and general construction.
swear to tell the truth.
Swear to tell the truth. Questions about the fence? So the existing wrought iron fence from the school period. We still have the pieces. We removed a couple sections of the fencing in order to get a large boom lift in to do a lot of deferred maintenance on the masonry and the cornice at the top of the building prior to the installation or start the work on the landscape. So that fence is intact and we will be reinstalling that once we do that work. And then again, a question on, it was a very beat up lawn that we removed. And again, we've taken over, we're updating, and redoing all the landscaping, providing a artificial turf for the dog area for the tenants. Again, it's mostly just for a maintenance issue.
We have a dog park over at Vet Park, and I know they have to take the dogs off for about 2 months every year to let them give the grass a fighting chance.
Right.
So that's why you're doing this.
Yes.
Um,
This time of year, it's not just a big mud pile.
What's the lifespan of this artificial grass?
I believe we have a 10-year warranty on it, so it's pretty substantial.
So it's not gonna drastically fade in a season.
No, and the material we've chosen is a multicolor, so it kind of has some greens and some browns and some olives, so it looks more natural for this area. But we're also on the north side of the building, so that the sun exposure is actually quite limited. It's also why the grass was mostly dead. So,
Thank you.
Anybody in the chat room?
I don't think so. Well, let's see, I don't know.
Anybody's here? Okay. Motion.
I recommend that the preservation board overturn the director's denial and approve the artificial turf at 4466 Olive. Second.
Is there some reason why we do this?
Because there's no predominant landscape use on the block. Yeah, that's what I'm going.
Discussion?
I'll just add that because of that finding, which I agree with, then this does in fact meet the Central West End local historic district standards, in my opinion.
The second is because it has the support of it.
Built on nice road. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Colleen, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Abstentions on this vote, there are 6 yeses, 1 abstention, 1 absence.
Business staff, in my PowerPoint, staff report, Bucket Square 70926 as their ordinance, 6468 and 64925. You have for you 23 grade 2 Whitmore, Lafayette Square. It's an appeal denial to retain 8 windows that are installed without permits. This is the building in question. It's on the south side of Whitmore. Next time. Some quick context for it. Just to the east of Jefferson. Next. Some street level context. On the right is the building in question with the white front. Left hand side, it's the building white on the left down slightly. This angle I want to point out, you can see the side of the building due to a wide sign. Next. The issue of question is there's 2 things. In the Lafayette Square Code, you cannot do metal clad windows on primary public facades which face the street. Windows that went in on the front were metal clad. For a good quality window, however, explicitly in the code, you cannot install metal windows. Next picture. Go back. So on the front, sorry, let's do it for a second. On the front, it's the metal clad issue, and then also we feel there's an issue with installation. So there's 2 issues at hand. This is the front facade, and that's explicit of the windows in question. Next. The applicant submitted some good pictures of the house throughout the past 40 years. On the left, it's in 77. So overall, you can see it's kind of had the same penetration pattern, size, scale. Materials was wood in 77 and 22. New windows, which have again similar dimensions for certain aspects like the lift rail. They're all pretty. Next. This is a close-up shot of what's going on. My colleague went out there actually when they were installing the windows, and we got a picture of the installed window. You can see that staff's issue is how the windows were installed. They are kind of blocked down to I think a smaller reveal in the glass area. So you can see how the blocking is kind of in there in an odd way. I'm sure the window would have been, mucked up over the years, but it's pretty small in the opening itself. Next. So what we look for when people apply for permits for windows are installation details that show the frame and the window in the opening. So at the top, what we want to see usually is masonry opening, the brick mold, a stop, and then the sash. And you can see this is the current condition of what is installed. The frame was essentially smaller than the opening, and you're seeing a lot more of the frame than you will see usually. So had they applied for the permit prior to installation, we would try to ensure that you would see more like the top picture versus what was installed. You're seeing a lot more of that integrated frame as part of the window itself. Next. On the side, east facade, you can do metal clad windows. And granted, they're harder to see. We'll acknowledge that, but you can kind of see that there's also a similar installation that wasn't front. So the sides, they can be metal clad. It's not the issue. We're just concerned about the installation of those windows method. So the sides, it's not the metal, it's just the installation. The front is the installation and cladding. Next time. This is the picture. So a few points. You have a letter from Lafayette Square saying that they're not in support of the applicant's variance. I do want to note at this time, Lafayette Square is in the process of updating their code. The new code will allow for metal clad windows on the front facade, and especially of pro staff viewing the project. So certain windows look good, like this is a good quality window, honestly. Had it been installed correctly, it wouldn't be a big issue. The brand window, it's a window, but just right now it's metal, you can't do it. In the future, if this all correctly, we could actually improve this window, but as of right now, it's not. So given that, staff recommends that the board not hold it tonight. Process up, we know.
I'm actually gonna get to that time.
You have still on time. So.
At least a couple months out.
At least.
And then this installation thing, can you explain that a little
Sure,
bit?
go back in. That one there. What's best for you are the speeds of the picture of it being installed.
That's fine. So it's the extra thickness, is that what you're talking
Yeah, so you're seeing more of the frame itself, more of the frame should be tucked in, which that point right, I apologize. And if you kind of hover where like the stop is, like, yeah, down below. Yeah, that should be up higher and almost peeking out below the frame. So you have more of the framing itself, it's kind of staggered above it. That should all be tucked in behind the brick mold. The framing itself should be smaller behind the brick mold to have less of the reveals. What this does, it has less glass area showing now, and it's really a smaller window. That's our concern.
about? Okay, so say the rules change. Would you accept this as installed if it's another window?
Probably not as installed.
But to fix it, you gotta start.
That would be the way to fix it initially. We discussed internally about making the brick mold larger, and what we're going to do, you're not, it's still a small glass, still way too much frame showing. And these things come, you size them out, they come back in already in a frame. So if the frame is it, you can't really modify that frame inside. It's ganged in essentially. So kind of stuck yet. I will note this brick mold is, it's simple you see it in most cases, but it is, there's a brick mold with interpretation like brick mold.
And if the applicant had applied for a permit, you would have only been able to approve the wood window option, since that's what the code says.
Correct.
Questions?
Should have been completed.
I see so.
So what do you got? Patience.
Sorry.
Thank you for your patience.
So, I'll make this short.
What's your name?
Bill Odell.
Is your testimony going to be true?
Yes. There's three issues here. One is the building permit, the second is the detail, and the third is the material. Building permit, we're absolutely good. These windows were ordered late spring, early summer last year. They were supposed to be installed March. They called right after Thanksgiving, said opening schedule, we can do it next week. Naturally, really crap. Since we bought this house in '77, I can't tell you how many times we've had building permits for everything, including kitchens, modifications, everything. We've always
That
had
that would make you a very rare, lucky square pioneer. Well, why for purpose?
I'm really aware of that. I used to be on the committee. In all of those, we had building permits from Health and Resources or predecessor organization. So we're totally supporting the code. Now, the detail, the window that was, there was three windows shown there. It's easy to see that the aspect ratio would change on the center window. The detail that's shown there is impossible for construction that we have at the house. Window frame that's there, right up against brick and the stone. There's no short taking out the stone and brick on the inside. Can't get a window bigger. So that's, that's the assumption. These are Marvin windows. If you know Marvin, you don't know Marvin. Marvin is one of the very first companies that invested in theory and design into manufacturing. This is why they dominated ever since the historic replication industry. Still do. Because they can custom make, which is why it's excellent. So what we did there is as close as we possibly could, the windows exactly, wish in retrospect, we'd saved one of the sashes. Wish we had saved one of those because it's exactly the same dimensions. That's the one that came up. Windows, that's the second issue. The third issue is the aluminum, as is noted. The code committee is about to change the code to allow. And I think that that's long overdue. All the other windows that have been approved by this committee or the previous ones have been aluminum clad with windows, including on the front, on the third floor, which has been there. And they approved aluminum clad windows, including a project we're doing on Shoto, the townhouses on paper, those are all aluminum clad windows. So it just makes sense. The original windows that we had from 1985 slowly deteriorated. That building, the house that we had was abandoned for many years, and of course, probably from World War I, didn't get much maintenance. But they eventually gave out, window by window. Generally, they failed at the corner. They couldn't hold the corners. The last one we took out, we opened the window just at the bottom of that. Interestingly, though, when we took the old windows out and broke them up, and we looked at this wood, I wish I'd saved it actually, because except at the corners where it's rotten, the wood was pretty close to hard to pine wood, very, very tight rings on it. A window today, a wood window today, has very wide rings, and simply will not last very long. Certainly not 100, whatever it is, 140 years. But those are previous ones, which is why the major manufacturers of windows, like Martin, I think it's about 0.5% of the total volume of windows, of wood windows, because they simply don't last, as opposed to it seems to me that the code, whatever code revision is easier said than done, I suppose. What's important is the dimensions, not necessarily the material. Because, well, I think architects have my opinion that aluminum clad at the moment is the best long-term material for the exterior windows. No maintenance for a very long time. No, next year some manufacturer might come up with something really cool that's a completely different material that allows you to do all this stuff in a much better way. So for all those reasons, I feel guilty for the building permit. Should have done that. Kind of solve some problems here. The window is as close as we could possibly get in every dimension. Putting in the kind of window that was there. I should point out too, most of the windows on Whittemore actually have storm windows in front. They're not the original ones. The windows, particularly on the south side where it's facing them, we purposely not put either storm windows or screen windows. We did have storm windows for a while because of 1830, 85 windows are not very energy efficient, but we put them purposely on the inside of works, by the way, fairly easily. The north side is a combination of some have storm windows, some have other things on it, but the windows that are on the north side are very, very close within centimeters of what our windows are, including the window stop.
About what you say, the staff's assertion that installation is what the hang up is, assuming you guys get to not all in your codes.
Well, if we'd gotten that comment before, I don't know what literally, I don't know what we would have done, but there's the window frame, outside to outside, is right up against brick or the stone. So we would have had two choices. One is to chop away the stone and the brick, obviously, or make a brick mold, which was really thick, which is not keeping at all. So at that point, I suppose it's been a rocket hard piece.
So based on the photograph, the center photograph, during installation, there actually looks to be one by material on both sides and header. And I think honestly, had that not been there, this window could have been marked.
You talk about the center window, that's far. I mean, it's not far. Good stuff. It's filling the gap
I got you.
between the frame and where the curtain is.
So there still seems to be, yeah, 3/4 of an inch there. Guessing.
Not really, I wish I'd taken more pictures. I can tell you, it's not good, but I'll tell you, right up against the brick. It's just- It's one reason I like that.
So
Any questions?
As a resident of Lafayette Square and a supporter of the historic district code, beyond your own case, does it worry you that the preservation board would be approving windows that came through without a permit on a primary facade on your own street? Does that bother you?
Yeah, it should have happened. Oh,
So if we do this here, and we might have to do it again because it might be cited as precedent, but would that bother you as a resident and a supporter of the code? That's my question.
I think you have to look at I think if you're going down that street, windows in our house, the one best on that street. That's what I would provide.
I did go back in the minutes as far as I could, back to 2019 on the website to see if we'd ever approved windows in that historic Lafayette Square house, and we have not.
So it was-
I couldn't find one. Windows that were not,
Non-conforming.
certainly windows have gotten, have been non-conforming in new construction, but I couldn't find any back to 2019 in a historic structure. So we would be setting new precedents, what I'm saying.
Seems like it.
Have you spoken to the older woman?
Sorry?
Have you spoken to the older woman?
Not in that.
Because any change, the district standing. She have to carry changes.
Well, I'm told that she's been part of this process. I'm not. I'm just getting this from the code.
but it would be a change that is anticipated by the next.
The material, but not the installation.
Right, and it's, the code change isn't referenced in the Lafayette Square Preservation Committee's letter. And they are, in theory, the ones working on the code change with CRO. Right. Because in theory, they could have written in their letter that given the change, we're okay with letting this one slide.
So now you signed that. Would you like to see? That's all right. Any further questions? Is there anybody who is trying to speak for or against? So, from the podium, with your name, sworn in, like everybody. Hello.
Hello, my name is Nathan Jackson, and I started out a little culture, and
That's even more than I asked. Perfect.
okay, and I get many tours of Lafayette Square. I run the Facebook page tour company now. I do historical research of homes. St. Louis history and architecture. And the one thing that stood out to me the whole time, we were sitting there, nobody mentioned it, is in the original window, you see, it's got like 2x2, cross shaped, and that's, that middle, piece is deleted in the new window. And I think that's, so.
Sure, Patty, can you go to the section detail again that shows the installation detail? See, there's a couple of points I make. This is all thanks to Andi. Andi's our window builder. She does a lot of hard work doing these windows on our list and then with the installation detail. So this is a lot of this is Andi's knowledge. So when we have planned windows a lot of times, we also look for them to notch the brick wall, try and alleviate those gases. Without that, we have this issue where the frame is pushed down so much. So you see that with the wonky wooden frame that's attached to it. It's not necessary to do that per se. You can put this thing in the opening directly without that much filling. And again, we actually try to notch that brick mold to hide that frame as much as possible. That's why we ask for those drawings. And staff, we talked about it for a while. We think it's close to say about a half inch of edge. We think all the way around it will lose some last. That's what staff did not go on those properties to measure, but we think it's a pretty substantial mark.
Yes.
Look at the drawing.
We actually need you on the recording. Go back to the microphone.
If you look at the drawing, the window frame, I wish I had a pointer. The window frame itself is up against, looks like wood blocking and maybe, I don't know what that is, slash right above the pointer. That's not our condition. Our condition, where it's showing wood blocking there. Somebody with a-
This is
Yeah,
wood
that-
blocking.
and that slash
This is-
little area.
That's brick right
This is brick.
Right there. Yeah, that's brick, but then go to the right. Let's control it. Okay. The blocking there, the 2x4 blocking, the insulation, and right below that is, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
That's the interior frame, you see.
It's not an interior frame, the window frame.
Plus, there's the casing. Casing wraps inside of the openings. You have the pocket voices sit in the pocket. You have the frame itself.
Okay, so the frame itself, rather than having the 2x4s and that casing that you're saying, in our house, that's brick and stone. So if you look at, if you run the cursor from the bottom edge of the brick, I'll talk you through this, all the way across, it's brick and stone. You can't push the window into, I mean, the window frame. Notching sounds easy, but it's not. You can't do that if it's stone and brick right there. Our condition is not like stone. And the casing, by the way, the window casing, we measured it against the previous one. It is bigger, it's like 1/8 of an inch bigger all the way around. We spent a lot of money to get this right. Waited a long time to get it right. Purposely not putting the screens on it. It's obviously very highly efficient. We're not putting, well, that's putting screens on it.
I'll say one more thing. Granted, every building might have a different condition. We understand that, but we didn't have a chance to look at the conditions. So if there were issues, I'm not, I would never doubt his word, but we didn't see that those conditions. And it presents odd to us, because we put these permits on. So that's all I'm saying. I can't speak for the conditions inside the house. That might present something else, but
Is there anybody at the top?
Not that I know.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Bob a question also?
Yes.
Is there any other example in, sorry, Commissioner? There- Went back to 2019. I've been on the board since 2021. I've been watching the board for a long time, but I don't know everything the staff knows. And this is kind of a situation arisen before, and you've been able to resolve it in this district.
In this district, I mean, I went back a few years ago, so forgive me for my lack of knowledge and stuff. Anybody else recently that you think of?
We haven't had a lot of window things come through the board in Lafayette Square. The last one I remember was one where they wanted to do a sash replacement and it wasn't allowed because it's not allowed under the standards.
And these are people who are applying for permits that you're reviewing.
Right.
So is there an instance on a front elevation where someone installed without a permit that you can remember?
I can't think of any recently.
Yeah, not since I've been back. That's 2 years now. I've been back. I've seen.
And the precedent with I'm thinking about like the Benton Park with the horizontal fence, like that technically hasn't been changed in the code, but every time we have one of those, we get a letter from Benton Park saying, we're working on changing the codes, we're okay with this. We didn't receive that letter.
Quite the opposite letter.
Thanks, Mark. Mr. Robinson, you have a motion?
I move that the preservation board uphold the director's denial for the installation of 8 new windows front facade as they are not permitted by the Lafayette Square Historic District standards.
Just, there are 8 windows, but only 5 are on the front elevation. Under motion to
3, 4, 5, 6 plus 2 at the top.
just about lower, and the other 3 are on the side elevation.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. I take my motion.
Seconds.
Second.
So to clarify that motion, you say turn down the ones on the front, allow the ones on the side. Correct. So let's start with I'm absolutely positive there is wood inside of the windows. I can see that there's additionally some foam caulking. There's absolutely no question, especially on page 36 of our agenda at the very top, you can see that there's a 1 by there. That is consistent also with the material on the side. You can see that that is in fact 1 by material as well. So that's 3/4 of an inch on 3 sides. Yeah, so these windows were sash backs, then that 1 by would be okay. But they're not. There are full windows that are installed, and with that type of installation, cannot, you get essentially what we've got here. So those windows actually should have gone directly to the dam and the header. And likely there was no locking that was to into the brick or the stone. And they would need to be anchored directly.
Curiosity, your building's never had this. How does this happen? Expensive windows.
Yeah, the way it happens. Two different types of historic windows. Sash packs, this would work because you wouldn't have the extra frame around it. And we wouldn't be here. With this window, you can't have that one line here and there.
Motion on the floor from made to second.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Ryan, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson stays on this. Five yeses. One recusal, one abstention, and one absent. Morning.
Last month, we really been engaging, trying to engage more with the community, reaching out, going to get meetings, et cetera. Looking for what we do. Neighborhood administration is, what our regulations are. So far, in the past few months, we've met with St. Louis Police. Their reps, board members, and actual meetings total 5 times. So we're really getting St. Louis Police there, contemplating becoming a local district. So it's now very conversational, but it's information about what that means, how to benefit their neighborhood, especially with future development, because they are, part of it is in their preservation review district, but new construction of their homes would not be protected. We met with Hyde Park 3 times, at Benton Park last month, as well as Tower Grove South last month. We're meeting with the Dayton Revitalization of Dayton Association on March 16th. We reached out to France Park, and we'll meet with them soon. And right after this meeting, Bob and I are attending Alderwich Meeting Park Hubbard's community meetings. All of them.
How many people are coming?
Well, they're general neighborhood meetings, so they're meetings about us. We just have to fill in some meetings if they aren't necessary. But it just, St. Louis Place probably had 20 or 30 people. Ben Park had easily 60. We heard 60 remotely. Hyde Park, it's just really dependent on the Christmas party, 20 people. They're meeting last Saturday was. Gosh, this else is probably 40 people.
What are the questions you have?
Well, my general presentation, yes, it's 2 shows. Which I know you won't see, but this is the most up-to-date version.
Just to let you know, we did plan that.
Yeah. Because for most, even for people in historic districts, they don't really realize the scope of the authority or the review of social resources. So what I say is, everything's a color on this map is something where we have some kind of review authority. Most of it's demolition only. Of course, that's the yellow areas, which are also underneath a lot of the colored areas. But in those areas, if you were to demolish something, then you have to come through us. And if there's subsequent construction tied to that, then also is a review. If you were to build a vacant lot in the yellow area, of course, it's just preservation review that only addresses demolition. And then the same rules apply in the peak areas of the national register districts. And then the purple and blue areas, since we're our local historic districts. Preservation review is about 2/3 of the geography. Local districts are less than 10%. So it's really a very small amount of city geography. New construction on big lots, renovations of existing buildings. Colored dots on here as well are national register sites, just the landmarks. So we do have quite a bit of authority. And then I talked about, depending on the neighborhood, I talked about the standards that we have. And I find this to be a very helpful visual tool. Because these are the 18 standards outside. So they vary incredibly in scope and length. I think Shaw's 4 pages. So bucket squares are 72. So that can present some challenges, and I'll get to that in a moment when I talk about PRP. But
I don't want to try to change the habits of a professional speaker and preservationist. But if you showed up to my neighborhood with a binder that big and said, this could be yours too.
again, I don't think that's the general neighborhood gauge, but I talk about when we're trying to make revisions, or when like Benton Park, to explain to them why it's really challenging. And I think that's some of the questions we're gonna get tonight at Shane Park Hubbard's meeting is, you know, why did y'all approve this, why didn't you approve this? And we want to be able to explain to them like it's complicated. Don't take the fun. We always take the fun. And then we also have their standards, we can look it up, if they have questions, just take their standards. Just ignore them, you got it. Yeah. Thank you. But that does lead me to the RFP that I mentioned last month that we're going to be trying to finalize this week, and that is an effort to bring uniformity to the standards so that they're not also wildly different. In fact, Bob, for the purpose of this RFP, went through in some sections we got, but just collected. Oh, yeah. So here's fences. This is the bill's regulations on fences. It's one line. Then Visitation Park is maybe 4 lines, and then Soulard has like 10 lines. Lafayette Square windows. This is an excerpt of Lafayette Square windows regulations. The entirety of the Hyde Park standards for windows are here. Ditto for Shaw. So, and it's not just that they vary in scope, they vary in the way they are written, so they can be extremely confusing. And we're hoping to, with consultants, just create a template so that when we do update the various district standards, that we're not trying to alter the content. You know, if neighborhoods still want to regulate only what they regulate now, that's fine. But just to have language, terminology, and approaches that is uniform across the standards, and it also addresses some of the unintended consequences of the way things have been written. We encounter those on a regular basis where just how to address this. Central Park, AstroTurf, or artificial turf is a great example. Again, we want to err on the side of caution, we want to set a precedent, but there are definitely areas in various standards where we can observe that there can be a little tightening up or a little loosening up. In case, I think it's Lafayette Square, where inadvertently, the way they describe the requirements for garages on corners and alleys, that every facade actually has to be brick. That's not what it says, but that's what it means when you read it carefully. So it's just an opportunity to look at all the standards and hopefully bring some clarity that will help us in terms of administration of the standards, help stakeholders, help neighborhood associations, help you. It's a big undertaking. We have to pull off, but that's purpose of this to understand the standards or to tell neighborhoods what standards they have. Purpose of this is to make the standards themselves less confusing. Again, I'm happy to let anybody find her. Just page and then put the same page with another set of standards and we'll see how incredibly different they are. They were just really, they attempted to convey the desires of the neighborhoods and stakeholders at that time. They weren't necessarily rigorously checked in terms of efficacy, clarity, and so now updating standards, as we mentioned, takes the integration board, planning commission, and if we're going to do that, we'd like to be doing it in a way that has some kind of framework that we'll use to update the standards as we go. Well, not yet. We're just doing RFP right now. We're not trying to change the content. If the neighborhood likes what they're regulating right now, we don't want to change that. If they want to change, that's fine. We just want there to be the standards themselves to be easier to understand. We also would like an illustration section. Right now, Lafayette Square has an illustration section, but they can cobble together different sources, they're different styles. Some of them have terminology that's not actually in the standards themselves. So having something that's a little more cohesive, I think would be in everyone's best interest.
So I'm curious, you came from New Orleans. How does St. Louis compare to New Orleans? Or other cities?
Here, it's a tricky question. So in New Orleans, there's the Fair Commission standard, so only for the French Quarter, much higher regulation. And then for all of the other historic districts, there's 2 levels. It's the same set of standards, but you can opt in for the higher level or the lower. So if a neighborhood wants to become a historic district in New Orleans, it's not already locally protected, they can choose which level they want. But there's no entirely new creation of brand new set of standards.
Why don't we just do that? That would make it easy to sign up all these other
I don't think that would meet the will of the neighborhoods.
I mean,
They have gotten
to get new neighborhoods.
Well, the new neighborhoods would also be using the same templates. So they could say, well, we really like the way Soulard is handling their stuff, so we're going to mimic the pattern of the ones that Soulard did. But I don't be going to be nice, I think that would make space. So,
I'm curious, how's the funding working for getting somebody to do all this?
this would be coming from the economic development fund.
How do we get a copy of that?
Oh, I'm happy to print out the size copies for your likes.
It's on our website. isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the website, if you'd like a hard copy for your decor. I have a 6-bit version in my office.
Nice soft palette.
Yeah.
Meg, at the end of the analysis, will you be holding a trivia night for us preservation board members on the local standards?
I think that is a great idea. I think it would be great for the staff to go to because I.
Free from your reports.
Yeah,
This fence allowed in McKinley Heights.
I honestly, we frequently just have to look at the exact wording of the standards, even when it's something that we've done, I think we've done 1,000 times before. Reading it again, it's like, ooh, there's an and there, or should instead of a shall. And they probably meant to write a shall, but they just wrote a should, and so that means that we don't actually have a mandate to restrict.
Wait, does the Lafayette Square Code say you should get a building permit for your windows? We might have to revisit some.
Is there a condition of inclusion to that?
I'm not. Sure.
Me too.
And will you work with it?
Yes, and I do have one more item. Got feedback from the State Historic Preservation Office on our last annual reports. They're generally very happy with us. You know, they're especially appreciative of the outreach that we're starting to do. But they did recommend, that's a nice word, that we all do more continuing education. And I know that during COVID, that was very difficult. But we are members of the National Alliance of Preservation Commission. You are as well, by extension. So I will be sending you information about upcoming NAPC webinars. That's one option. They are free. I'll send you one. There's actually one on Thursday, incorporating art into historic districts. Code. If you do participate in these for any other kind of outreach or education or seminars or conferences, anything else, please let us know so that we can document it and put it in our annual reports so that they know that we are continuing to stay on top of the field and our board members are as well.
My chat, whatever you can.
I did make a presentation at the Lafayette Square Neighborhood Association in December, I think, to explain to them about preservation board versus committee versus our code, et cetera.
And I was with her.
That's not true.
Okay, Commissioners, anything else? Jeff?
Wait, I have one comment. I'd like to say, I live in Whitmore Place, and I actually have the best views of Whitmore Place. I kept my story.
On the record.
Yeah.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
But that's.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing no objection.
Awesome.